From a production perspective, obviously our acquisition was a transformational transaction. We increased our production from the fourth quarter of 2018 to the fourth quarter of 2019 by 241%, and virtually all of that increase has come from our purchase of those assets. We averaged roughly about 23,000 barrels in 2019 versus about 17,500 in 18, about a 27.9% increase. The most significant asset we acquired were 3 deep cut plants, one at Jumping Pound, Caroline, and Waterton. Between the 3 of them, they represent about 750 million a day of processing capability, and that number is a big part of how we're going to supply our first train. One train requires roughly about 800 million cubic feet of gas a day, and so you can see the 2 numbers are very close in relationship, and that is how, as we begin to build all of the infrastructure across Canada, how we will begin to service our first train. So more on the natural gas. Obviously, that is what we are mostly going to be producing for our LNG project. In Q4, we were roughly about 2018, roughly about 102 million a day of production. We are roughly about 253 in the fourth quarter of 2019. Some of that due to the fact that we were shut in for a lot of the summer and we had some flush production. And as a result of that, we had a significant amount of growth over the previous year, roughly about 240%.
Thank you. The next question comes from Donald Leon, an investor. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Pieridae. What has the Trudeau administration done for the LNG project so far?
Well, as I just mentioned in answering David's question, that they have been very actively discussing with us what our requirements are. They have, as I've said to many of my friends here in Calgary, they don't like hearing this, but the government has been very responsive to what we are trying to accomplish. We have moved this conversation considerably down the playing field from where we were before the election. And I do think that Minister Seamus O'Regan he is the new Natural Resource Minister for the current government. He is a Newfoundlander, and he is very keen to see economic development in Atlantic Canada and has taken up the torch as well, and maybe exceeding what we thought would happen. So very much pleased with where we sit, and we do believe that we will make significant progress over the coming weeks.
Okay. Is it like, because I think personally this is a national security issue, why would it take so long? And like, could you add some color? Like, it's a big project. There's still only one. On the East Coast.
I agree with your comments, and I certainly would like to get a nice big cattle prod and move them along. But I do think we have to be somewhat realistic. The situation the government is going through right now is unprecedented, and that we're able to keep their attention is a victory in itself. But we are very closely watching how we can fit into the programs that have been announced so far. I'm not sure if you're a resident of Canada, but you might have seen the Global Mail had a very large article about the infrastructure projects that they're looking at funding to get the economy started. We think we fit into a lot of those categories, and those 5 items that I kind of outlined, probably in a cost structure perspective, somewhere around $1 billion Canadian, so roughly about 10% of the overall project, and that is kind of why we sort of see if we can get this piece of business done, we can keep on our schedule for late 24, 25. And I do think that the government of Canada recognizes that this is an important project for the German government, that they are a very significant ally of Canada, that energy security is important for the European Union. And one of the comments the minister made to me when we were with him sort of end of February-ish or so it was, it's kind of hard to keep track now, that since the CETA agreement has been signed between Canada and the European Union, European countries have taken European companies have taken huge advantage of CETA, Canadian companies not so much, and this would be a big balance the other direction. So it is, I think, the national security importance of the project from both an economic and political nature is well recognized in government, and I also believe the Alberta government strongly believes that LNG is an important part of a long-term natural gas strategy, and both of those entities we are well involved with and continue to try and make sure that we get the answer that we're looking for.
Okay. And my other question, more broadly, you've mentioned a couple of times that you're hoping for help from the federal and provincial governments in Canada. What exactly is it that you're looking for?
Financial help, no doubt about it. When however you want to look at that help, whether it when we look at what Alberta just did with Keystone, we face a lot of similar issues that project does, and maybe not so much of the environmental or social issues, but certainly the development risk issues at this part of the project are very similar. And I sort of explained to government that the reason why TransCanada wanted $1 billion was to help cover the really difficult time between now and construction. And that is really the same scenario we are in, and it's sort of that package that was put together by the Alberta government is very similar to what we would be looking at a much smaller scale than what they did for TransCanada and TC Energy. But I would say that package would fit us very nicely, but probably more towards $1 billion rather than the 4 or 5. I think that their total commitment was to that one.
Oh, okay. And I guess the other example is federal government buying Trans Mountain Pipeline. Would you be looking at anything like that?
No, we're hoping not. That's not the solution. We're not trying to put this project on taxpayers indefinitely. We want a hand up, not a handout.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. And the next question is from David Dubuque, an investor. Please go ahead, David.
Hi there. I want to know, you had permits to conduct geophysical geochemical surveys in the Gaspé Peninsula last year. What work have you done in Gaspésie over the past year, and what work do you plan to do in the region in the coming year?
Well, if you had heard from the beginning of our presentation, we at this current time are not looking to, we are maintaining the safety of the assets that our wells have already been drilled, but we are not looking at doing any additional work in Quebec at the current time. We are still unclear as to what are the rules and regulations to develop resource, and until we clarify with the government where we sit with the Helleman properties, we will not be investing any further in the province.
So no further investment.
Right.
And I had a question about what's happening right now with the pipeline capacity between Montreal and Portland. In an article in S3+, your company said that the entire first train is going to be fed with Alberta conventional gas, and this gas is going to transit between Montreal and Portland via Trans-Quebec Maritime. We know Trans-Quebec Maritime already operates at 200 million cubic feet per day, which is its full capacity. And your first train is going to need 4 times that. So what are the steps required to have the capacity to bring those 800 million cubic feet per day into the all the way to Portland?
Well, you'll have to ask TC Energy that question. Now, our agreement with them is very clear, is what we've requested from them is capacity from Empress to Westbrook, and that is the agreement we have with them. The specifics of how they get that gas through the pipeline system is not part of our business plan, and we are not involved in how they plan on doing that. We are only a shipper on their system, and it's best that you ask that question of TC Energy, not ourselves.
I did ask that question to TC Energy, and I got an answer from Sophie Lucier. She's a general director for TQM, which is part of TransCanada. And what she told me is that they don't have any agreement with Pieridae Energy. So that's why I'm feeding the question back to you.
As I just said, our discussions are with TC Energy, and TQM is not a part of our discussions with TC Energy.
So you don't have a clue how they're going to manage a pipeline between Montreal and Portland to carry your gas, except that you have an agreement, but you don't know how they're going to uphold this agreement, right?
David, we've answered your questions. Thank you. We'll move on to the next call operator. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question comes from Lucy Battaglia, an investor. Please go ahead, Lucy.
Hi, thank you very much for hosting this call. So I'm going to bounce off this previous question that's just been asked. So if a new pipeline needs to be built, within what time frame do you plan to obtain the permits? And do you have an idea of how much this addition is going to cost?
As I just finished saying, that's TC Energy's role, and we don't have any further comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further questions. You may proceed.